H.H Devamrita Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Vishnu Padam Subhadaraja Jai. Sto Dedasisima Bhakti Siddhanta Shashita Prabhupada ki Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 28. Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life. Text 61. Yes, 61?
Yeah.
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta.
Yat Pumam Samstriyam Satim
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Manyase Nobhayam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
Hamsa Pashya Vayorgatim
Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta.
Yat Pumam Samstriyam Satim
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Manyase Nobhayam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
Hamsa Pashya Vayorgatim
Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta.
Yat Pumam Samstriyam Satim
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Manyase Nobhayam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
Hamsa Pashya Vayorgatim
Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya Yesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta.
Pumam Samshriyam Satim
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Maya Se Nobhayam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
So Prasad Yogatim
Hamsa Yogatim. Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta. Yakumam Samshriyam Satim. Manyase Noyam Yadvai. Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta.
Yat Pumam Samstriyam Satim
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Manyase Nobhayam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
Hamsa Upasya Vayorgatim
Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta. Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Manyase Noyam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
Sampasya Vayorgatim
Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta
Maya Hesha Maya Shrishta.
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim
Yakumam Samshriyam Satim.
Manyase Noyam Yadvai
Manyase Noyam Yadvai.
Sampasya Vayorgatim
Hamsa Yogatim.
Maya,
Maya,
illusory energy.
illusory energy.
He, certainly.
Certainly.
Esha,
Esha,
this. Maya,
Maya,
I need.
Shrishta,
created. Yat, from which. Pumam sam, a male. Striyam, a female. Satim, chaste. Manyase, you think. Not. Ubhayam, both. Yat, because. By, certainly. Hamsa, free from material contamination. Pasya, just see. Avayo, out. Gatim, factual position. Translation. Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, and sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body, which is created by the illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. Now just try to understand this. I am trying to explain our factual position. Purport. The factual position of both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is qualitatively one. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Spirit, the supersoul, and the living entity is the individual spiritual soul. Even though both of them are original spiritual identities, the living entity forgets his identity when he comes in contact with material nature and becomes conditioned. As such, he identifies himself as a product of the material nature. Because of the material body, he forgets that he is the eternal, Sanatana, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of God. This is confirmed in this way: Mamayamsho Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The word Sanatana is found in several places in Bhagavad Gita. Both the Lord and the living entity are Sanatana, eternal. And there's also a place known as Sanatana, beyond this material nature. The real residence of both the living entity and God is the domain of Sanatana, not this material world. The material world is the temporary, external energy of the Lord, and the living entity is placed in this material world because he wanted to imitate the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this material world, he tries to enjoy his senses to his best capacity. All the activities of the conditioned soul within this material world are perpetually taking place in different types of bodies. But when the living entity acquires developed consciousness, he should try to rectify his situation and again become a member of the spiritual world. The process by which one can return home back to Godhead is Bhakti Yoga, sometimes called Sanatana Dharma. Instead of accepting a temporary occupational duty based on the material body, one should take to the process of Sanatana Dharma or Bhakti Yoga so that he can put an end to this perpetual bondage in material bodies and return home back to Godhead. As long as human society works on the basis of false material identification, all the so-called advancements of science and philosophy are simply useless. They only serve to mislead human society. Anda yatandaya upaniyamana. In the material world, the blind simply lead the blind. Translation again. Sometimes you think yourself a man, sometimes a chaste woman, and sometimes a neutral eunuch. This is all because of the body, which is created by the illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. Now just try to understand this. I am trying to explain our factual position. Om Again Chimanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Try to understand the factual position. Here, the supersoul is explaining something extraordinary. Both you and I, both the Atma and the Paramatma, share the same quality of spiritual identity. How have we forgotten that? This is the miracle of Maya. That although we are qualitatively equal with Krishna, we've trashed ourselves out by loitering in the material world and taking on so many bodies. And that whole process is unnecessary. But we are so bewildered, we can't get a grip on what's happening. We can't get a vision of what we're being subjected to. We're so distracted by temporary stimulations, temporary entertainments, temporary diversions. And we take those entertainments, diversions, distractions, we take them to be the essence of life. In other words, we don't know what we're doing. And we don't have the clarity of vision to try to understand what we're doing. So this is the situation today. You're dealing with persons who are actually gone mad, in mass. So obviously, if you're trying to be sane, if you're trying to live according to the standard of Srimad Bhagavatam, you will look different. There's no way around that. So you have to decide whose life is based on knowledge and whose life is based on ignorance. Whose life offers at least the possibility of something extraordinary and whose life doesn't. We don't gamble, but if you do want to gamble, you can gamble on Krishna. And yeah, this looks pretty good. Yeah. There's a big payoff at the end, and meanwhile, while we're making progress to that ultimate goal, there's good prasad, good food, good people, good music. So you gamble on Krishna. You throw the dice on Krishna. You gamble on Krishna, you always win. Always. So it's the one gamble you're entitled to make. And, as Srila Prabhupada explained, if you think you may lose by gambling on Krishna, you won't lose, but if you, due to paranoia, you think you might lose, then what's the big deal? Your whole life has been a complete loss, so what's one more loss? We've been losers lifetime after lifetime, so what's one more? But you won't lose if you gamble on Krishna. So again, let us contemplate how Krishna and we are qualitatively equal. This section of the Bhagavatam is stressing that. And that point can appear a bit startling because we think that if it's being said we are qualitatively equal with Krishna, then why not go to the next step, which is, we are Krishna, we all are God. But no, that next step is never presented in Bhagavatam. We are qualitatively equal with Krishna, but we are so tiny. The best you can say about yourself is that you are a little Krishna. And of course, we are stuck in the embarrassing situation of a material body in the material world. So obviously, although we're qualitatively equal with Krishna, we did something very stupid. We allowed ourselves to come under the grip of material nature and be oppressed. Therefore, this purport is redefining what is human progress. Human progress means to regain your membership in the spiritual world. Not going from one body to another, totally bewildered, accepting the body as the self, which is false, as we discussed yesterday. And then that one falsity leads to another. Number one, you accept your false identification with the body. And number two, then you must be saturated with false desires. So how is it going to be peace? How is it going to be real human progress? When you've got one foundational mistake, which brings on a massive mistake of artificial desires. This is why the chanting of Hare Krishna is so important, both in the preliminary stages of spiritual advancement and also in the advanced stages. In the preliminary stages of bhakti, the chanting of Hare Krishna cleanses the misconception that we are the body. And then it proceeds to extinguish the blazing fire of material existence by extinguishing artificial desire. And then, as Lord Chaitanya describes in the Shikshashtaka, gradually the chanting of Hare Krishna revives your original pure desires. And those original pure spiritual desires culminate in pure bhakti, in which Lord Chaitanya says, Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagadishakami. Mama janmani janmani shri bhavatad bhakti avaitikita. Birth after birth, I don't mind, as long as I have pure devotion to Krishna. So in all phases of life, the chanting Hare Krishna mantra is essential. It deals with the negative and it revives the positive, our membership in the spiritual world. Membership in the spiritual world means our loving relationship with Krishna. And that attraction to Krishna, as it develops, transcends all material situations. This is what Kunti Devi is demonstrating in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The battle of Kurukshetra has ended. And Krishna is about to leave Hastinapur for Dwarka. But Kunti Devi and the Pandavas don't want him to go. So Kunti Devi submits her famous prayer, which is mind-boggling to us. Krishna, you've been with us through so many calamities. And she gives a long list of disasters that Krishna helped them through, directly mitigated the situation. So Kunti Devi presents the astonishing conclusion. Let those disasters happen again and again, because when a disaster comes, you're here. In other words, the real disaster is you're not present with us. That's the real catastrophe. So I say, she says, if calamities bring about your darshan, your presence, then let there be calamities one after another. What kind of love is that? You can't see yourself saying something like that in material existence. No, the purpose of the relationship in material existence is that the person you're relating to is an ally, helping you in your struggle against calamities, to reduce calamities. But would you ever say to a person, let calamities come again and again, just as long as I can be with you? You couldn't bring yourself to say that. You don't want calamities, and you want the person's association to help you to avoid calamities. But Kunti Devi is pointing to a love that is so non-material and so intense that she's disregarding the coming and going of material catastrophes and simply saying, we want to be with Krishna. Or looked at another way, she's saying, the real calamity is Krishna's departure. So she has to invent some crisis so that Krishna will stay. Krishna, everything is not exactly cozy here yet. The battle of Kurukshetra may be almost completely over, but there's so many envious kings now who will be angry at us because their allies and relatives lost the battle and are dead. So Krishna, you have to stay with us to protect us against these calamities caused by envious kings. Now, it's not that Kunti Devi was appealing to Krishna for material purposes, but she's just out of pure love. She's conjuring up, she's manufacturing reasons why Krishna should stay. Her motivations are completely pure bhakti. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, you'll read about the discussion, who is the dearest devotee? And when the topic of the Pandavas comes up, you find that the Pandavas are always deliberating. We've got to come up with some excuse for Krishna to be with us. How about a huge yajna like the Rajasuya yajna? That could be a good idea. It takes too long to arrange such a sacrifice. What kind of crisis could we come up with so that Krishna will be present with us? The essential factor is their love for Krishna, not their attachment or aversion to material catastrophe. So that makes you wonder, what kind of love is this? What is going on with this level of pure bhakti? Just like with the Brahmana husbands of the yogic Brahmanis, the wives immediately, when they heard that Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys are hungry, they immediately fulfilled the desires of Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys without hesitation. In fact, when the cowherd boys came to them, after being frustrated by approaching the Brahmanas, the husbands, after the cowherd boys approached the ladies, all the cowherd boys simply said was, Krishna and Balaram are nearby and they're hungry. Just by hearing Krishna and Balaram, the ladies went into ecstatic trance. And then, amidst their ecstatic trance, the ladies were cursing themselves. Wait, let's get out of this ecstatic trance. Krishna and Balaram need to be satisfied. What are we doing, lost in ecstasy? This is pure love. So they brought themselves out somehow of the ecstatic trance caused by just hearing Krishna and Balaram. And they gathered up foodstuffs and raced to present them to Krishna. Whereas their husbands, as you know, wouldn't even give the time of the day to the cowherd boys. They didn't even respond. The cowherd boys had approached them so humbly. Hey, Bhumi Deva, oh gods of the earth. Still, the men, the Brahmana men, were not moved at all. They didn't even answer. The cowherd boys said, Krishna and Balaram are nearby. Krishna had warned them, don't ask in my name. They're not so sensitive to me. Better ask in Balaram's name. But anyway, the cowherd boys, in their ecstasy, just blurted out, Krishna and Balaram are hungry. They're nearby. No answer. The Brahmanas were absorbed in their yajnas, their mantras and their offerings into the fire, which they thought were so important. But when Krishna sent the cowherd boys to the wives of the Brahmanas, the reaction was completely different. So later, the men, the Brahmanas, came to their senses. What came over us? We've missed the point of life. We have three assets. Number one, birth in a Brahmana family. Number two, initiation into the Gayatri mantra. And number three, initiation into the yogic sacrifice. All three of these assets are totally spoiled because we did not recognize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then they said an interesting thing. Krishna came to us deceptively, looking like an ordinary boy. That's not exactly right. But you know, when you make a mistake, you always like to try to justify it in some way, even while pretending to be humble. Reminds you of one letter I just saw about some managemental affair down under Australia, New Zealand. So one temple president who didn't take care of his devotees very nicely, he submitted his resignation. And in submitting his resignation, he said, it's the fault of these, it's the fault of those, it's the fault of this, it's the fault of the leaders, the gurus, the GBCs, it's all their fault. And at the end of the letter he says, excuse me if I made any offenses by writing this. So the Brahmanas were accusing themselves. In other words, they're telling themselves, we're stupid, but Krishna was acting deceptively. He came looking like an ordinary cowherd boy, so we flicked him off. But Krishna was not deceiving them. They were deceiving themselves. They had even heard, by their own words, they admit, they had heard talk that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared in Vrindavan. They heard the village talk. But due to their unfortunate nature, their hard-heartedness, they didn't recognize Krishna when he came through the cowherd boys and made that request. Krishna was not deceiving them. They deceived themselves. They took Krishna to be an ordinary person, which shows you without knowledge, if you don't have knowledge, something can be right before your eyes and you don't recognize it. So they missed their opportunity. And they began to wonder amongst themselves, why would Krishna beg food from us? The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, is always seeking his association. If he's Purna Kamasya, if he's completely full in his desires, why would he then beg? They deliberated about this with their Brahman intelligence. And then they came to the right conclusion. He was just giving us a chance for us to get his mercy. And we blew it. In spite of our Brahmana austerities, in spite of our yagyas, in spite of our studies of Shastra, in spite of our vows of celibacy, we missed the point. But what about our wives? They began to consider their wives. How have our wives developed such an ecstatic attraction for Krishna? They haven't lived in any ashram. They haven't done any austerities. They haven't studied the Shastras. Yet, here they are, so spontaneously attracted to Krishna. Their attraction to Krishna was so firm that nothing could impede it. That's the proof of firm attachment to Krishna. No material circumstances can stop it. As Kunti Devi says in the first canto, may my attraction to Krishna ever flow, just like the Ganga flows constantly into the ocean. So the Brahmanas noted that about their wives. They've got the real thing. Nothing could get in the way of their attraction for Krishna. And of course, the obvious comparison given by the acharyas is what happened when the gopis in Vrindavan in the middle of the night heard Krishna's flute. They raced away without any inhibition. So this is presented as the highest goal in life. To race toward Krishna, to satisfy Krishna without anything getting in the way. Or if anything tries to get in the way, there can be no impediment. The attraction for Krishna is that strong. So the Brahmanas were noting this about their wives. Nothing got in their way. Our disapproval, the Vedic rituals, nothing. They just grabbed food and ran off to present the food to Krishna and Balaram. We had that opportunity, but we're so unfortunate. So someone might say, but these women, after they met with Krishna and the cowherd boys and gave them all the food, when they came back, they were completely oblivious to any kind of affection for their husbands. There was no attachment anymore visible between them and their family. So, is that good? There's deliberation amongst the acharyas. What would people say about that? They ran off to be with Krishna, they came back. They were worried about coming back, right? They told Krishna, how can we go back? Our families won't accept us. We've just risked everything to come and bring you food. But Krishna told them to go back. But Krishna promised them, I'll arrange that everything will go smoothly in your families, in your homes upon your return. You will not be rejected. So when they got back home, their husbands were not antagonistic. Wait a minute, we are the pati, we are the guru of the house. Why aren't you showing attachment for us? No, the husbands understood. They have been with Jagat Guru, the spiritual master of the whole universe. They have attachment for the spiritual master of the whole universe. We should accept our wives as gurus because they have attachment for Jagat Guru, Krishna, who is the actual instructing guru of everyone. So they weren't angry. Our wives are so fortunate. They have attachment for Krishna that cannot be impeded. Whereas we're so attached to our Vedic rituals and Vedic austerities, we miss the point. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaishta sarvaya aham eva Veda. By all the Vedas, it is I who am to be known. But the Brahmanas missed the conclusion. They missed out what is Vedanta, what is the end result of all Vedic study. So they were cursing themselves. The hell with our birth as Brahmanas. The hell with our getting this Gayatri mantra, this initiation to that yajna. Forget it all. It's useless because we missed the point. No spontaneous attraction for Krishna. Whereas our wives haven't had any formalized Vedic training. Yet they have received the ultimate goal of life. How did they do that? The men were wondering, the Brahmana men were wondering amongst themselves, what happened? How did they just develop this spontaneous attraction for Krishna? Who taught them this? There's no one around who could teach them that. We certainly didn't teach them. We Brahmana husbands were just so stuck up into our yajnas and Vedic rituals. How did it happen? Oh, it must be some kind of miracle. What they didn't know was that their wives, doing their daily errands and duties, were mingling with the garland makers, lady garland makers from Vrindavan, and hearing about Krishna's beauty. So just by their gossiping with the lady garland makers in Vrindavan, they became attracted to Krishna. Yes, and ladies like to talk, yes. We won't call it gossip, they like to dialogue. They like to discuss things with many other ladies, and then you make up your mind midway in the discussion, right? Yes. One of my senior god sisters pointed out that ladies are like cows in that cows have 7 stomachs to digest. So ladies need to discuss with at least 7 other ladies in order to come to a conclusion. It's just a different species. No value judgment. So the Brahmanas are wondering, how did our wives develop this spontaneous attraction for Krishna? But the truth was the ladies had been networking. We won't say gossiping. Networking with other ladies in the Vrindavan area, the ladies who make garlands. And the garlands are offered to Krishna. And they were talking about that beautiful cowherd boy. His activities, his qualities, his form, unlimitedly attractive. So just by hearing from authorized sources, because in Vrindavan everyone's authorized. Krishna is actually the guru in Vrindavan. So everyone's authorized. Especially they're seeing Krishna, they're serving Krishna, they're loving Krishna. So they started, the garland makers, the lady garland makers started buzzing, with the wives of the brahmanas. The brahmanas' wives also needed garlands, for the yajnas. So simply by something as simple as transactions for garlands, love of Krishna was being transmitted. This shows you the power of Krishna Katha, distributing the nectarian information about Krishna, talks about Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastime. So the Brahmana's wives got it. Who is this Krishna? And their spontaneous love for Krishna began to develop. So much so that when the cowherd boys sent by Krishna approached the wives of the Brahmanas, the response was completely different. As we said before, as soon as they heard the announcement from the cowherd boys, Krishna and Balaram are nearby, they're hungry, they went into samadhi just by hearing the words Krishna and Balaram. But showing their pure bhakti, they began to deride their ecstatic samadhi. What are we doing in ecstatic trance? Krishna should be served, he's hungry. Snap out of it, snap out of it. This is the standard of real devotion. You know the example given in Nectar of Devotion about Krishna's assistant in Dwarka, Daruka. He was fanning Krishna and he broke out into ecstasy. And then he criticized himself. I've got to get rid of this ecstasy. It's interfering with my service. What kind of relationship is this? We want a relationship that produces ecstasy, but the real devotees of Krishna want nothing to interfere with their service to Krishna, even ecstasy. So the wives of the Brahmanas are demonstrating that. So, afterwards, the Brahmana men were cursing themselves and praising their wives, and decided to take shelter, formally take shelter of their wives. They accepted their wives as guru. And they began to deliberate amongst themselves. Somehow or other, our wives have developed a spontaneous attraction to Krishna. We should make amends. We should immediately go and beg Krishna for forgiveness. We took him to be an ordinary person. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Avajananti mamudha manusim danamashrita. Fools deride me. They think I'm an ordinary human being just because I have a naralila, human-like pastimes. Naravapu, a human-like form. They think I'm just ordinary. So the Brahmanas thought we should go to Vrindavan immediately and pay our dandavats and beg forgiveness. It's true Krishna deceived us, otherwise how could we super smart Brahmanas not recognize him? But in any case, although he deceived us, we'll go beg forgiveness. But day turned to evening, and they still hadn't taken one step toward Vrindavan. What happened? They, in the back of their mind, were thinking, Kamsa has spies everywhere. If Kamsa's spies see us going to Krishna, we could be killed. Now, why didn't the wives think that? Normally, women are supposed to be considered less courageous, but no, nothing got in the way. No consideration, no impediment, no inhibition got in the way of their racing to satisfy Krishna's desires. But their husbands couldn't take one step after all that talk. Oh, the hell with our Brahmana status, the hell with our yajnas, we missed the point, on and on. They went, our wives are so glorious, they developed spontaneous attraction for Krishna, we should go to Krishna and beg forgiveness. Didn't take one step. Because of fear. Now, you want to get technical about that fear. The acharyas described that fear the brahmanas felt was a shadow in their consciousness produced by Krishna, because Krishna knew these guys are not ready. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samarvata. I don't reveal myself to everyone. I reserve my revelations of myself. So these brahmanas were not pure in their motivation. They weren't ready to associate with Krishna. So Krishna fulfilled their mentalities by producing in their mind this shadow of fear for Kamsa. So therefore they didn't go. So we can learn from that about how the goal of all our activities in bhakti is to develop attraction for Krishna. Krishna is the property of his devotee. Therefore, we're serving the devotee, knowing that that is the authorized way to develop attraction for Krishna. Krishna is the property of his devotee, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite bar. I'm running after the devotee, shouting Krishna, Krishna. And in this verse, you see the peak potential of a devotee. The peak potential of all living entities, qualitatively equal with Krishna. That's just an astounding thought. I have the same quality as Krishna. What happened? Why am I so madly pursuing the illusory energy? I want to regain my membership in the spiritual world. Now, what would happen if you would tell your former friends or your family members, when they ask you, what's your career? My career is to regain membership in the spiritual world. Real. What are you going to do with your life? You got to make money. You got to enjoy. What are you going to do? I said my career is to regain membership in the spiritual world. It sounds so foolish. It sounds so impractical. It sounds so dreamy. And that's the nature of the society we live in. If someone asks you, what are you going to do with your life? And you say, I'm going to enjoy my senses. Huh? Be happy whatever way you can. Well, what's your goal in life? My goal is to revive my qualitative equality with Krishna. So as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, what is night for one type of person is day for the other, and vice versa. You can't artificially break down that barrier. There are different classifications of persons, human beings. Some are awake in materialism, and others are not paying attention to materialistic goals and aspirations. So therefore Krishna says, what's day for one is night for the other, and vice versa. The goal of our service is to revive our attraction for Krishna. The more you hear about Krishna, the more you become attracted. Just like the Brahmana's wives heard from the garland makers about Krishna. And that was enough. Sound vibration will do it. When the sound vibration is pure, then the presence of the spirit soul and the supreme soul becomes known, becomes revealed. We were explaining when we first came, so you probably don't remember. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that the experience that people have in kirtan, when the kirtan has pure motivation, the experience they have is that they're tasting the happiness of serving Krishna. They may know it, they may not know it. But while they're dancing, just like yesterday I was watching everyone dancing and chanting. So based on the words of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I could see they're all tasting the happiness of serving Krishna. Some or other, even though Tarkanath wasn't present, we were tasting it. Achyutatma wasn't present also, but some or other. Life went on. And I looked at the newcomers, the guests, they were all amazed. And they were chanting and dancing too. They don't know. You're tasting the joy of serving Krishna. The kirtan makes that accessible to everyone. And then, when the kirtan is over, you feel inspired. Let me serve Krishna. Let me engage my other senses in service to Krishna. Where is that service to Krishna? You notice after kirtan, you become very rowdy in terms of your spiritual desires. Yes, Krishna, we should serve Krishna. You're ready to go pound on the door of the temple president. Where's the service? And then, of course, after kirtan, you take prasad. And you're fully satisfied. The tongue has vibrated, and the tongue has savored the food offered to Krishna. So what more do you need? What more do you need in life? Why make things so complicated? You need kirtan, prasad, and opportunities to engage in Krishna service. That's the real career. So let us always remember, what is the goal? And that goal is unlimitedly attractive. As we discussed yesterday, let us not have a bias against unlimited beauty, all the unlimited opulences of Krishna, and especially his unlimited sweetness in Vrindavan. Let's not have a problem or issue with that, just because we're so attached to our tiny bit of illusory pleasure. We can't acknowledge that Krishna unlimitedly, infinitely exceeds us. But Krishna is always inviting us. Regain your membership in the Leelas. You always have to keep in mind an extraordinary paradox, that in the lowest, most degraded of all times, the greatest gift is given out freely. So keep in mind what's going on, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has done. In the darkest of all times, people have access to the most confidential spiritual gift. So you always have to keep that before you, in front, in your vision. Although I'm living in such a berserk age, I have ready access to the greatest jewel because of the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda. Gradually, the more and more you hear about Krishna, the more you become attracted. And in the association of devotees, that attraction becomes condensed, like milk when you boil it and make kheer. So this is why we need the association of devotees, to concentrate our attraction for Krishna. Without the association of devotees, we lose the ability to distinguish between material and spiritual affairs. Have you noticed that in persons who have kind of backed off from associating with devotees? If you ever talk to them, you find that everything has become hazy. Yeah, well, actually everything is kind of spiritual, they tell you, We don't want to cut ourselves off from what people are doing. The rugby match is kind of spiritual, The surfing is kind of spiritual, It's like, relationships, I've got a spiritual girlfriend now, It's like, I intend to tell her about Krishna one day. After I wear her out a bit. So you lose destroys your ability to distinguish between material and spiritual affairs. And it's hard to understand when you're within the association of devotees, unless you have that knowledge. You get bewildered. And sometimes our newer devotees get bewildered. Why would someone back away from Krishna after having some initial small attachment or attraction? It's because they backed away from association with devotees. And by doing that, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, the ability to distinguish between material and spiritual affairs starts to dissipate. You just become sentimental. Everything is beautiful in its own way. Or sometimes such persons will say, I got tired of criticizing the materialists. I mean, we're all in it together, you know. So please, always stay in the association of devotees. Revive your attraction for Krishna in that way. Regain your membership into the spiritual world. What does Lord Kapil Dev explain in 3rd canto of Bhagavad? Satam prasangam mama viryasam bhavanti hrittarna rasayana kata. Talks about Krishna in the association of the Sat, those who are dedicated to the eternal. Those talks in that association are extremely powerful. And by discussing and glorifying Krishna and chanting Krishna's names in that association, not only does the doorway to liberation swing wide open, but most importantly, you develop attraction for Krishna. It becomes revived in you. But you never think you've got enough Krishna. So you always feel yourself to be deficient. You're an eternal beginner. Although it is a fact that your attraction for Krishna is developing, you never think you have enough. This is described by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says the paradoxical nature of love of Krishna is the more you have, the less you think you have. So therefore you're on an eternal quest for more Krishna, more service to Krishna. Even though you're overflowing with love for Krishna, you still think, I'm deficient, I don't have enough. You're satisfied, and at the same time you're not satisfied. In other words, you're not dealing with here material dissatisfaction. Spiritual dissatisfaction is of a different category. It's totally pure. How can I please Krishna more? So someone might think, well, that kind of situation is forced, isn't it? You've worked yourself up into some kind of theological, religious doctrine that says Krishna, Krishna. No. The more you chant Hare Krishna, the more you engage in Krishna's service, the more you're attracted to Krishna's beauty. What can you do? What can we do when Krishna is so beautiful, his name, form, qualities, and pastimes? What can we do? And the peak of that inability to cope with Krishna's unlimited attractiveness, the peak of that is seen in Vrindavan when Krishna plays his flute. What can his consorts do? They're acting naturally. Similarly, when the Brahmana's wives ran off to bring food to Krishna Balaram and the cowherd boys, what else could they do? They just heard the name Krishna Balaram. And then they heard the desires of Krishna Balaram. Bring food. This is real natural life. Material life is so artificial. We've produced so many artificial desires which only promise us satisfaction. But we're so crazy, just the promise of satisfaction is enough to make us go on decade after decade. So what you see is people living based on a promise that's never fulfilled. So if you can see that in your analysis of existence, you'll save yourself so much trouble. They're living for false hopes. But those false hopes are so powerful. I am going to be satisfied. If I just work harder, if I just get older, if I just do more things, go more places, I will be satisfied. It's like this mirage has taken over the consciousness. If I just meet the right person, and if the right person would act the right way, on and on and on it goes. Their consciousness is taken over by these false hopes and desires. So this is why you note there's difficulty in waking them up out of this dream. You can't wake up someone who doesn't want to wake up. No, let me sleep, let me sleep. Leave me alone. I've got a good dream going. So please remember, our core principle is developing attraction to Krishna through devotional service to Krishna. And by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, even in this most degraded age, you can have the greatest acquisition, the greatest love.